Okay, on to our next part. So question 3 is giving you an exact value of cosine, but the question is asking to find all values of the trig functions. So sometimes the nice first thing to do, it's really easy to, but is over on the side. Now granted, you'll notice from my video to your sheet of paper, there's not near this much room, but from excuse me, from my pen, it's kind of convenient. I can't write as small. So, but anyways, the first thing I like to do on these, since I have to give all values of the trig functions, I just go over here and I write sine of t cosine. And I just write all 6 of them out. So I go sine, cosine, tangent, and then each of their respective reciprocals. So we already know cosine of t, so I'm going to write that one in, negative 0.2841. So the easiest first step, if you want to consider the table first step, great. But otherwise, the next easiest first step is to find the reciprocal for cosine. So we need to find cosecant. So all you got to do is type in 1 in your calculator, type 1 divided by the number given, negative 0.2841. And you get negative 3.5199, so we type that in. So secant, because cosine and secant go together, negative 3.5199. Okay, so see, we already got 2 of the 6 answers. In this case, we have cosine, so what we're going to do, we want to use those trig identities. Now, if you, on the test, if you look somewhere, probably the top of the page, here in the review packet, I believe it is right on the front of the first page, but we have our Pythagorean identities. So we're going to use that to solve our next 2 trig identities. So we're going to take what we know, which is sine squared plus cosine squared, but cosine we know is negative 0.2841 squared. But we know that sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. So sine squared equals 1 minus that value squared. And then we're going to take the square root eventually. But so if you take the square of this negative number, take 1 minus that, you'll get an answer. But then sine of t, if you take the square root of this number, what we find is sine is equal to negative 0.9588. Whoop, sorry, I say negative, but in this instance, see, if we take 1 minus this number squared, so what is that? Squared, 1 minus the answer. So this is saying sine squared is equal to 0.919, 0.9193. So sine itself, if we took the square root of that 0.919, whatever, it's 0.9588. God dang it, sorry. So we're going to go ahead and transfer that, 0.9588. And then we can take 1 divided by that answer to get our reciprocal, sorry, so cosecant, and cosecant and then is 1.0 30. Because at some point, yeah, right, find that to the nearest 4 decimals, to the nearest 4 numbers after the decimal, I think is what that meant. So now we have sine and cosine. We have their reciprocals, cosecant and secant. Our last step is we know that tan is sine over cosine, right? So we can just say, hey, tangent of t is just our sine that we just found, 0.9588, divided by cosine, which was already given to us. So if we run that number, we find tangent is 3.3749. All right, double check that. Yes, perfect. So our cotangent, we just take 1 divided by that answer, and we find cotangent is 0.2963. Now, the last thing we have to be very careful about is this little note right here. This little note that says the quadrant we're working in is from pi to 3 pi over 2. So that's right here. So is sine negative in this quadrant? Yes, then we need to put a negative in our answer. Is cosine negative in this quadrant? Yes, so we put a negative. Is tangent negative? No, so that remains positive. And then we match up our reciprocals. So cosecant has to be negative, secant is negative, and our cotangent is positive. So there you go, you solved number 3. I will move on to number 4 in the next video.